All right, I'll say good day to all of you this day of your time. Let us begin this transmission by reminding you that the title is Let's Get High. Now, this is meaning in the word high, capital H period, capital I period, capital G period, capital H period. And we would now like to explain what this is all about. In the changes that are now taking place in your society and around your world, and as we continue through the passageway that we have called the eye of the needle, where you are going to go through whatever process is necessary to divest yourself of the belief systems that no longer align with who you prefer to be, and let them go so that you can accelerate through this passageway toward the new beginning of the window of open contact in your year of 2023, we would like to share with you a state of being that is important for you to generate for yourselves as often as possible, every day, if possible, that will help you slip through this passage more easily and deal with whatever it is that comes up during this time. So let us begin to explain what this high vibrational formula actually represents. It is different emotional states, different energy states in this one word, represented by these four letters. That is a particular formula or equation of energy that will allow you to remain grounded, but at the same time allow your consciousness to expand in very specific ways that will see you through any challenges that may come up as you move forward through this passageway. The first H stands for honesty. It is of critical importance in this time for you to express the idea of honesty in your lives. Now, of course, we are talking about the idea in general of not necessarily telling lies, although that's not really what the idea of this honesty state of being is about. It's more about being honest with yourselves in your deep investigations of your belief systems, not ignoring, not glossing over, but allowing yourself to be truly honest about your motivations, what you believe to be true, so that you can become much more transparent within yourself and have more ease in discovering the belief systems that may be out of alignment with who you truly prefer to be, and thus the belief systems and definitions that may be holding you back from moving forward as swiftly, as smoothly, as effortlessly as you possibly could. So, in the sense of this honesty, it is about know thyself, self-examination, not being afraid to dig deeply, dive deeply within your own mental ability to assess yourself, to be all right with discovering the fears that may exist within your belief systems. In other words, not being afraid to be afraid, and knowing yourself more clearly, more truly, and allowing yourself then to let go of those things that do not allow you to perpetuate that clarity, that honesty of your own being, and presenting yourself in the world that way as the honest, true self. Of course, we understand that it is also about the idea of not necessarily telling falsehoods, although we do understand that there can be circumstances in your reality where what you call little white lies might actually be the kindest thing you can do. But also it's about being honest within yourself to know what your relationships are, what is appropriate for you to communicate to yourself and to others in your relationships with other people on your planet, so that you will know the difference between something that you're saying that may not be what you truly, actually, factually observe, but are being able to relate a kindness to someone, to soften something for them because you understand they are looking to be handled gently, handled kindly. And so we understand that we're not really referring to the idea of not necessarily telling the whole truth to someone that you may feel, but it's also an opportunity to get in touch with why you do feel or believe that way. So that again, in clarifying yourself, you may then find yourself not so often in situations where you might be forced to say something that might not be wholly true, but would be necessary in order to impart a kindness to someone by not being, shall we say, so completely honest with them about what you feel in that moment, but being more honest with yourself about why you feel the way that you do, giving yourself a chance to clarify that for yourself so that it may become completely unnecessary for you to say the things or be in the situations where you're forced to say the things that might be those little white lies in order to impart kindness to someone who has asked you a question or exploring something with you. The second letter is integrity. I for integrity. And this again amplifies the idea of being a holistic being, true to yourself, having your own understanding of your ethical standards, your own concept of the morals, and allowing yourself to stick with them, of not having contradictory or conflicting belief systems within yourself that allow you to act one way in one situation and a completely different way as a different person in another situation, but maintaining the integrity of what you believe to be true about yourself so that you move forward in a holistic way, not split, not in conflict, not necessarily presenting more than one identity or one face to others so they can understand more clearly and more transparently who you truly are, so that they will understand who they are really in a relationship with. So you are not fooling them or faking them out or changing your mind every other second to confuse people as to what you stand for and who you are. Having the integrity to be integral, to be allowing all of the aspects of your being to function harmoniously, harmonically, synchronistically with themselves, so that you present yourself to yourself and to the world as a particular frequency that is representative of your truth, who you truly are, and not creating confusion and the idea of misunderstanding and misrepresentation and misinterpretation about what it is you do stand for in your life, in the world, what is really the truth for you, after an honest self-examination of honesty in getting to the core of who you are and what you really need, and letting go of those fear-based beliefs that may cause confusion within you and confusion within others about who they are dealing with. So we have the idea of the honesty within the self, the integrity to move forward as the true self, with all components and aspects of consciousness in alignment. And then we move to the G, which stands for gratitude. So you have honesty, integrity, and gratitude for your life, for who you are, for your existence. For that is the true core of what you call prayer, is simply being in deep appreciation and deep gratitude for what is and who you are, and even the things that may manifest in your life as the challenges, as the things you may not necessarily objectively prefer, and still knowing that they are there manifesting for a reason that can serve you, to be always in a state of appreciation and gratitude for what is in your life, not focusing on what isn't in your life, as we have said before in the AAA formula of acknowledging what is there, not what is not there, allowing it to move forward after you have given it deep appreciation for being there, because you know you can use it in whatever way is necessary to enhance your life in a positive way, to get a benefit out of it. Therefore, it doesn't really matter what it is. So be appreciative and grateful in a state of gratitude for everything that manifests, for where you're at and what you've learned and how you can move forward by taking those lessons with you, not so much dwelling on the past, but being in the present so that you can move forward into your future in a way, again, that brings the honesty and integrity with you as you remain in a state of gratitude and appreciation for who you are and what you are experiencing in this physical reality that you have chosen to explore. And then Finally, in this formula, the final H, which, as some of you may be surprised to learn, stands for humility. The idea of remaining grounded as you expand your consciousness. The idea of allowing yourself to rely on the obvious and to not necessarily allow yourself to become too enamored with your expansion. Allowing yourself to remain on a level where you are relatable, where you can, in a sense, allow others to be able to interact with you in a way where you are approachable, where you can interact, where you are an inviting individual in that sense, not pushing anything on anyone, not necessarily needing anyone to know anything in particular about whatever gift you have to give. For there will always be an audience if you have a gift to give. That is absolutely certain, or you wouldn't be excited about the gifts that you are giving from yourself. But the idea is to remain grounded and humble with the things that you are giving out, that you are sharing, that you are being. Stay centered, stay focused within yourself, and know that the importance is simply being the reflection and the mirror for others, to allow them to be of service to them, to allow them to become more of who they are through their interactions with you, for that is the core of every relationship, no matter what kind, is to be there for the other, to allow them to become more of themselves, even as they ideally choose to do that for you. So in remaining humble, in humility, you can, as equals, move forward, none being greater or more valid than any other, and allowing yourself then, with the idea of honesty, integrity, gratitude, and humility, to form a particular bubble state of being, a particular formula of vibrational frequencies and energies that will carry you through in a very sacred way through the months and years to come, and allow you to slip more smoothly through this passage, through the eye of the needle, so that eventually you can emerge as a being that is in synchronous harmony with itself, with all life around it and within it, and allow yourself to be known for who you truly are, so that none have to fear that you have any particular outside agenda or hidden agenda about expressing yourself and your creativity and your passion in the world, but that you do so only to give the gifts you have to share, to be of service to others, and to be your true self, so that all know who you are, who they're in a relationship with, and can benefit from the reflections that you give as the mirror in whatever relationships you form, thus inviting others to do the same for you. So with honesty, with integrity, and with gratitude and humility, we will extend to each and every one of you our deepest appreciation and unconditional love in moving forward together in harmony with us, being that is your choice, of course. And at this particular point, in gratitude for allowing us to share this idea, this state of being in this little formula, which is very powerful, with all of you, I ask, in what way now may we be of service to you? Please begin with your questions and comments so that we may share moving forward together.
Hi, Bashar. This is Sheila from Lakeland, Florida, and I'm excited to get to ask you this question. So this question has to do with an experience or a sighting that my husband and I had recently. So first of all, we were inspired to take a walk in a different area than we haven't walked in this area before. So that seemed interesting, first to start with the inspiration. And the walk didn't seem like anything special until we saw this orangey, glowing, it looked like a fireball sort of coming at us in the night sky. And so that was a little concerning to be like, oh, what is this? And it's coming at us. And then just when I had this little bit of a concern about it, interest, but there was concern, it seemed like it turned. So I went from thinking it's an organic thing like a meteor to now it's something else, and it turned. And then we got a side view of it, and it seemed to be, round on one end and kind of shaped like this, and orangey, still kind of looking like how I would think a meteor would look coming into the system, but it wasn't behaving that way. I don't know how to describe it except The movement seemed weird. It felt important. It felt significant. It felt like, ooh, this is something really interesting and exciting. And I'd like to know more about that. Thank you so much.
There are many craft that go from one dimension to another, passing through your reality. The fact that someone may perceive it means that your vibrational alignment may be conducive to that particular frequency at that particular moment, allowing your senses to become more aware of all of the traffic that is around you all the time, coming and going through your reality. So it can be right now a symbol for you of an increase in sensitivity to higher dimensional frequencies that will allow you to perceive over time more and more of the comings and goings of different beings in levels of consciousness as they express themselves in whatever form of energy is appropriate while they pass through your particular reality. So use it as a marker for an increased sensitivity in your ability to relate to higher frequencies and dimensions of experience, would be our suggestion for you at this time.
Hello, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Hey, so I spoke to you in this way about 4 months ago.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful and honored to have so much Bashar in my life. So
we are grateful and honored to have all of you in our lives as well.
Yeah, so thank you. And I know your favorite T is brevity. So
Yes.
I'll do a really quick recap.
Thank you.
I got diagnosed with AML, which is a really dangerous and aggressive blood cancer. Doctor said, hey, if you don't do aggressive chemo, you're going to die, likely within 3 to 6 weeks. I still chose to be discharged. I did a detox, and then we spoke, and you had said, be open to all forms of healing and just
Yes.
kind of let your life guide you. And I just want to say that was really good advice, which I knew at the time, but it turned out to be really good advice. And yeah, I got through the whole experience in a really kind of flowing, effortless way.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And so in December, we did a bone marrow biopsy, and it showed no detectable trace of leukemia at all whatsoever.
All right.
Testing. So that's awesome. And the real key for me with that was, I think, vitamin C. I think like high dose vitamin C was, I think, super effective.
It was your permission slip.
Right. And so my permission slip, and I don't know how general that is as well.
To some degree it is for many people, part of the general consensus reality, not for everyone, but for many.
Yeah. And you had also discussed with me that these types of experiences often result in like a shift of focus.
Yes.
For people. And I was trying to think about, for me, because I feel like in a way, I mean, I loved my life before, and I'm going to go back in a very similar way. But at the same time, I think one thing that came out of this experience for me was throughout this whole process, I was making videos to tell my friends how I was doing and just inform people what was happening.
Yes.
And that's been an amazing experience, and I've loved it. And I didn't realize I liked making videos so much.
All right. Well, thank you for teaching yourself more about yourself through that experience.
Yeah. No, so thank you. And so I will definitely continue to do that. And I think I'm going to start a YouTube channel.
All right.
Upload those and like make more videos as I go.
All right. Up to you.
So thank you. And so I had some questions that kind of relate to this experience. I know you don't do health readings, so it won't be that. But specifically where you say all pain is resistance to the natural self.
Yes, in general.
So, okay, I'll give you an illustration, if you will. So say in a parallel reality, which I would perceive to be my past, I'm best friends with Buddha, okay? Him and I are best friends, and we're walking down the street. We're about to go somewhere to get some food, not like in a lunch sense, but just sit, and then people would feed us, because that's how it worked back then. And he stubs his toe. He's like, Patrick, I stubbed my toe. And I'm like, Buddha, you gotta let that stuff go, man. What are you resisting? Would that be good advice?
Not necessarily, because as we have also said, and as many people on your planet have said, sometimes there are just circumstances within physical reality that happen because you are in physical reality. Not that you can't gain some insight or lesson from it, but not everything is a 100% dire lesson. Sometimes it's just watch where you're stepping.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I guess the point I'm trying to make is I understand if, say, you have a expectation something is going to happen and then it doesn't, and you resist that process, then there can be a lot of suffering because of that. Because you say, I don't want it to be a different way, and like I don't want that, and I'm resisting, and it's painful.
That's more what we are referring to when we say that pain is the result of resistance to the natural self, because you are not buying into, shall we say, or accepting your natural flow of how things unfold in your life, and not understanding that things are happening as they happen to give you opportunities to know more about yourself, to have more insight into your relationship and definitions of that circumstance.
Right. Okay. And so that I'm totally on board with. But then does this also then go into, for example, physical pain? So things that so things that I've noticed in my own life, like for example, with this whole cancer adventure that I was on, a lot of people I think experience a lot of pain in these types of processes. I had very little. I mean, almost none, I would say.
Yes.
And so then that would then also be kind of a reflection of that, right?
You didn't necessarily have a high degree of resistance to going through the experience because you were willing to be open to the idea that you would learn something that you needed to learn. And so you used it in a way that was, quote unquote, less resistant, therefore less painful.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. I have to say I really loved it. Like that might be a weird thing to say, but I really like, it really showed me a lot, and it was a very powerful experience because I felt like I got to stand in my power, kind of decide my own path, and it just...
That's the point.
Yeah, and it just fully worked out. I mean, like full on worked. So it was great. I loved it.
All right. Thank you.
And okay, so I have another example for you. So say you're my neighbor.
You mean me specifically?
You specifically. Yeah. But but you're a human, okay? But you specifically, because I like to talk to you. So you're my neighbor, and I see you in the hallway, and I'm like, oh, hey, Bashar, how's it going? And we go in the elevator, and then in the elevator, I'm like, so, COVID vaccine, are you gonna get it? What do you think?
I can't comment on this at this time.
Okay. Well,
you are in mid-process. You are in mid-process. This is a health issue. And you know we cannot talk about that.
Okay. Well, can I just share some thoughts on it just from my perspective? And
you may share if you wish.
Okay. So this is how I feel about it. I feel, well, I have degrees in physics and math, so I love science. Okay.
Yes.
And I understand that there is a sort of social responsibility component where you say, I may not be in an age group where you're very much in danger, but you want to contribute to the idea of getting herd immunity for everybody. And so it's a public service. And you could also say that, well, I mean, I am at a little bit of risk of dying and maybe less risk of dying of the vaccine. So there's also a bit of a personal component there. But I also feel somewhat resistance to putting things in my body that I feel like don't have to be there. And I don't know exactly what's in it, what kind of toxins are in it. So yeah, I just feel like I see both sides of it. And I'm probably going to get it because I like to travel internationally and I think it'll be required, but I just wanted to get your take on it. So
I have no take on it, as I told you. Everyone must find their own path and be open to deciding for themselves what is the path of least resistance for them based on their own belief systems and what they believe works not only for them, but in service to others. It's up to you to determine this. We cannot comment on it.
Right. Okay. Well, I will just say I certainly have the belief system that if I get it, which I will likely, I will not have any side effects, most likely.
Don't be insistent
to that idea.
Don't be insistent.
Exactly. Okay, this is so good. All right, I have another question. My mom and I actually talk about this a fair amount. So you have often talked about we're transitioning, the splitting prism, different parallel Earths, and so forth.
Yes.
And that not everybody that's here with us right now is going to come with us.
Correct.
At least the one I'm going to.
Correct. And you will not necessarily go to the one that they're going to.
Exactly. And so so we talk about this a lot. There are different theories about how this actually physically manifests. So do we just shift to an Earth where there's less people, or Are there like major...
Not necessarily. It depends. There is a version of Earth with less people. But again, you will shift to the version that is representative of the vibrational state that you have created yourself to be. The idea, again, remember, is that there may be other versions of people there that are in the reality you're in now that are simply different versions. And therefore, it may not necessarily be that they have to be less populated, but they may be populated with the same amount of people, but different people who may look the same because they are another version of the people that you were used to in the previous reality, but they will not be the same people, and they will have different approaches and different attitudes and different perspectives that are more commensurate with that particular reality. So it's not a given that the population has to go down, but of course there are some versions of parallel realities where the population is not as high. So yes, that's possible, but again, you'll find that out as you shift.
I bet I will. Yeah, because I feel like there are people that are so away from my vibration, or like where I think I'm going to go.
Yes.
Like, I just like don't see how it's possible even for them to change.
But they don't in that sense. That's what I'm saying. Those people that would appear to be the same people who are different are already in that reality. They're not the same people.
Right.
Just because they look the same doesn't mean they are the same. It doesn't mean the old person changed. It means that you're dealing with a new person who happens to look like the other one.
Right.
Does that help?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And
yes.
Yeah, no, I thought I had so many questions, but now I can't think of anything else to ask. So I think that's it for me today.
Then that is perfect timing. Thank you for your synchronicity and have a wonderful day.
Bashar, thank you so much. I love you.
Our unconditional love to you as well. Good day.
Bye.
Dear Bashar, 11/11/2020, Russia announced that we are not alone, and the geopolitical and space expert Alexander Semenov spoke about the importance of establishing a peaceful collaboration in space. Could you give us your 5 cents on the issue? And happy belated birthday.
Obviously, we are a proponent of peaceful collaboration in space. Different cultures and different countries and nations on your planet will have their own recognition and realization at different timings of when it is appropriate for them to begin to admit and to recognize our existence and the existence of other extraterrestrial and extra-dimensional beings that have, to some degree, already been in contact with your planet, or those yet to contact your planet in a more open way. It's all part and parcel of the timing of the recognition and the opening of that recognition in different places on your planet that will eventually come together in a holistic sense so that the entire planet at one point will allow themselves to recognize the existence of extraterrestrial beings and in their own good timing be open to the idea of forming these collaborative interactions. Again, this will accelerate in the window of open contact that we have now said has shifted from 2023 to the idea of about 2033.
Hi, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
How's your day going?
Perfect, and you?
Perfect as well. I'm having a really nice synchronicity because it's almost minus a day since I had a podcast with you, and then it just synchronistically happened that I was going to be able to ask you questions. So,
all right, congratulations on your synchronicity.
Thank you. So I have a lot of questions about vibration, so hopefully we can get to most of them.
We will get to the ones that are important to get to, so you don't have to be hoping.
Okay, sounds good. So there was a woman I just recently watched Children of the Future, that transmission, and she mentioned a parallel life where she was a sort of doctor in a future reality. And she was talking about they were using vibration to, I guess, heal organs in the body.
Yes, this is a logical extension of where many will be heading in terms of experiencing everything as resonance, everything as frequency, and it will and is extending a little bit more and will continue to do so into your medical technology as well.
Right. And so my question was, I know we've also talked about the you gave us an exercise where you could impose a vibration onto a ball, and then we would find that it would go into a different location when it
Yes.
was. Yeah. So my question is, are we, or is there a difference, I guess, between imposing a vibration and getting a location and imposing a vibration and healing an organ? Or is there a difference, or how would that work? Like, for instance, if we impose a vibration on a liver, why wouldn't it move to a different location like the ball would?
Because you are not necessarily imposing a difference in the locational variable. You are taking a reading that gives you a different kind of output.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was wondering. And then with using,
Although, in a sense, it's the same thing because, again, you are shifting to a slightly different reality where there is a healthy liver. So in a sense, that is a change of location too, just not in the classical sense of moving across a space.
okay, that makes sense. And then, so with your ships, because still with like vibration and the location thing,
Yes.
when, so I guess if we were to use it, or even just you guys using it to get to certain locations, would
Yes.
you have to know, or I guess, will we find a pattern with vibration and location so that, for
Yes.
instance, we don't
You
have
create a grid. You start with your position, whatever position you desire to be the 0 position, and you expand a grid out from there that represents the different locational variables, of course.
And so would that be like an X, Y, and Z kind of thing? So you can like move up and down, not just.
Of course.
Okay. Okay, cool.
It would not only be an XYZ thing, but a T thing as well. Remember, your experience of time is included in that.
Oh yeah, because time is also like a marker for different. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes. Because it's not only where you arrive, but when.
Right. Oh, that's so cool. And so we'll find that then eventually at some point in our discovery of
Eventually.
yeah, somewhere in the future. Okay. Oh yeah. So then also, I know all these questions have to do with vibration, but
You said they were.
yeah. So if we were to maybe impose isn't the right word, but if we were to find a way to impose a vibration, kind of like how you've mentioned Egyptians did, I think I might be quoting this wrong, but I think you mentioned at some point there were certain coffin-like objects where they would go into it and then that would astral project, like they would use.
We were talking about the coffer in the king's chamber in the Pyramid of Giza.
Okay, and so if we were to do something like that, like maybe using stone or something, whatever
Yeah.
it is, and then impose vibration, would we just astrally project, or would our physical bodies also go somewhere?
Both are possible. Again, it just depends upon the construction and the vibrational resonance that is induced.
Okay. And how would we get back? Like, would it be safe to do it? Or?
Well, there are a number of ways. Again, of course, with astral projection, you are in control of coming back anytime you wish.
Right.
The idea of the chamber inducing astral projection is just something that helps with the impetus of projecting out. It doesn't mean you have to have the idea of a projector on the other side in the astral realm. Your consciousness is sufficient. The idea of physical teleportation is something that may require, again, depending on a variety of factors, another device at the other end.
Right. Okay, so for physical transportation like that, would the device at the other end have to be resonating at the same frequency? Would it be like a sort of, I guess, beacon, but that's not the right word.
Yes, in a sense, it is interconnected. It is sort of similar on a macroscopic scale of what your scientists refer to as entanglement.
Got you. Okay, moving into some dream questions, if that's okay.
Yes.
So I've noticed this past week, myself and some friends of mine who I guess, people would consider like in tune or whatever with the collective, or everyone has that ability, but you know what I mean. We've been having a lot of dreams of, for one, this whole week, the dreams have just been objectively dark, like really like playing on themes either of manipulation or things like that. And then we were also having dreams, uh, a few of us having dreams this week in a row of a lot to do with tsunamis. And I know that could just be representative of the emotional state with water and everything, but
Yeah.
everyone's been having them in the same location. It's been in between, some people are having them in Hawaii and some people are having them in California.
Yes.
Um, so
There is a probability of such happening physically, but of course, there is always also the emotional and psychological component of the idea of great shift and things being washed away to make room for new things. So it is on both levels because there is a physiological probability. It may not be high at this particular moment, but there is a physiological probability of such happening in physical reality too.
at some point in the future.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go back to the vibration question. So with the imposing vibrations on bodies and stuff and astral projecting,
Yes.
will it feel like this is gonna be weird, but will it feel like the body's dying? Because like it feels like
It can. It depends upon the person's relationship and response to the idea of the vibration. It just depends on how cognizant they are of the shift and what the relationship and definition is of the idea that they are shifting into the concept or projection of a completely new personality, which to some may make it seem as if the old personality is dying in the classical sense, even though nothing of the sort is actually happening in exactly that way. So it just depends on the person.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Bashar.
Good day.
Good day.
Hello again, Bashar, and thank you for your answers to my previous questions. You said in a previous transmission that the hybrid children sometimes like to play a game called Find the Portal, and I was wondering if we humans can also play this game, and what do we need to do to be a better energetic match to being able to play this game, and is any technology used to help play the game, and do the rules change as the children get older? Are there different rules for the younger children, the older children, the teenagers, and so on? Thank you very much. That is all. Good day.
The answer to all of that is yes. The idea, of course, again, as following the formula refines your senses to make you more sensitive to certain kinds of energies, thus making it easier for you to find the idea of the nexus of any vortex or portal. But yes, as you change, as you mature, as you develop, and including the hybrid children, the so-called rules of the game will also change because they develop more skills, more abilities, and can expand the idea of what the game is and what it contains. So if you want to call the rules something that changes with the maturation of any particular being because now you can do more, have more abilities, have more skills in the game, then yes, those rules will change.
Good day, Bashar.
Good day.
Shabbat.
What would you like to discuss?
Concerning the frequency of the individuals who are inherently experiencing a negative portion of reality and consciousness. When an individual incarnates in order to be a representation of the so-called negative frequencies or properties of the overall collective experience, what is the best way for them to go about it? For instance, an individual who is to give the collective an experience of addiction or an experience of infatuation to the point of detriment. How is one to go about a life that is inherently negative?
The idea, of course, is that anything can be used in a negative or positive way. No matter what an individual does in their state of being, others can use it to their own advantage if they so desire. That being said, all an individual has to do is choose circumstances and attract situations that constantly prevent them from becoming more aware of the fact that they are choosing that reality instead of simply feeling like a victim of it.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Another question. What psychedelic resonant with this planet would be closest to the Eshikani frequency?
Dimethyltryptamine.
I have noticed that it is very hard to get away from oneself when experiencing that level of self.
Yes.
And one more question. I have an intense desire to be a part of the growth experience and the first contact experience of the Eshikani and the human race.
Well, you're having contact with us at this point, so obviously you already are a part of it, or we wouldn't be talking.
Yes. And in what way could I possibly look into being a vessel for the communication directly from a member of the Eshikani to bring forth an even clearer message in my life of connection and contact?
If you're asking that kind of a question, you should already know the answer, which is?
Follow my passion and my bliss to the highest degree of my ability with no insistence on the outcome.
And finish the formula.
To the
You've
greatest
only
of my
stated 3
ability.
parts of it.
Bring me clarity, Bashar.
You act on your passion to the best of your ability with no assumption or assistance on the outcome, and you remain in a positive state, so that no matter what occurs, no matter what manifests from your actions, you can use it to your advantage and gain the benefit from it. Simultaneously, investigating with honesty your belief systems and letting go of the ones that are out of alignment with who you prefer to be.
Yes. I can honestly say there's nothing else to ask. I will get on that immediately.
All right. We thank you. Good day.
Bye.
Aveo.
Hi, Bashar. This is Pira from Detroit, and I have a question for you about fracking and the negative effects it has on the Earth currently and in the long run. Thank you. Ha'atu.
Anything in that sense that is invasive within the structure of the Earth may have long-term detrimental effects. Again, the idea is to find other sources of energy, such as the electromagnetic field of your planet, such as higher dimensional frequencies that can be downgraded, so to speak, or stepped down through transformer-type structures into energy that you can use with your technology. So we would always suggest that you aim in the direction of those more natural sources of energy that are without the detrimental effects to the idea of the planet in a non-invasive way.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi.
Good day.
I have so 2 big topics or questions that I wanted to go over.
Yes.
The first is the story of Adam, Eve, and Lilith.
Yes.
I was wondering if maybe you can shed some light on that, and did these people actually exist?
Well, in a manner of speaking, yes, although the story, you know, in a sense, has been rendered into something simplified as a tale, as a metaphor. The idea of, in the ancient language of the Anunnaki, that injected their genetics into Homo erectus to create Homo sapien, is that the male version of Homo sapien they created in their language is Adama. The female version is Eva, which you have transliterated into Adam and Eve over time. So the idea is that, of course, there was a first male and a first female, but the idea has been truncated, collapsed, condensed into the metaphorical story that you know in your Bible. Lilith represents again the idea of the continuation of the line of Homo sapien in the genetic alterations by the Anunnaki, and represents kind of the concept of independence, the ultimate independence of the human race, and the balance point that needed to be achieved when it was recognized that Homo sapien had been created, and offered the third alternative. As always, we talk about the idea that there is a trinity in existence, not just a duality. So the concept of Lilith and the feminine principle in balance, the masculine and feminine principle in balance in Lilith, creates the midpoint, the third reality, the balance point in the Trinity between the two dualities of male and female.
And why is it that Lilith, it seems to be that she was taken out of the modern version of what we learn?
Because as a patriarch he grew and wanted to reinforce the idea of male dominance, the concept of the balance point of male and female in one body was anathema to them. And they sought to remove it so that they would retain control and empowerment over others and over the female side.
Okay, and that's interesting. And was this all done in a laboratory in Temple Mount, at Temple Mount?
There were many different labs around your planet, but the primary one was in the Middle East. The idea, again, is that, remember, this wasn't all done all at once. This took some time. So the idea of this story is quite condensed, and it condenses many, many decades, even hundreds of years of time in the creation of Homo sapien.
Okay. The Garden of Eden, can you shed some light on what that was and maybe where it was?
Well, again, in the Middle East, as given, between what you call the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in the Fertile Crescent, being the primary contact point and laboratory and civilization that the Anunnaki established when they came to Earth and spread out from there.
Okay, and the serpent that came to Eve, who or what was this?
This is simply an indication of the awakening of the genetic markers that would allow the female to be closer to the concept of the original Anunnaki genetic structure. This is why you have the double intertwined serpents on your medical caduceus still today, as an indication of the genetics laboratories and the genetics that were injected into Homo erectus to create Homo sapien, being that in the feminine side there was an alteration that allowed the feminine side to become a little bit more aware of the situation than the masculine side, and a little bit closer in expression to the original Anunnaki genetic strain.
That's interesting.
It also represents, therefore, the idea of ancient knowledge, that in a sense, because of the genetic alterations in the feminine form, there was more capability of accessing the knowledge of the Anunnaki.
That's fascinating. And in the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, the Anunnaki, is that translated into Elohim?
For the most part, yes. Although the Elohim can also be other beings that were encountered from time to time, but in general, it's a reference to the ancient Anus, yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Bashar.
Yes.
And on another topic, so I seem to be obsessed with this story. I think it's the most exciting story, spectacular story, the story of Exodus.
Yes, yes.
Did the Jews know that were they aware that it was aliens that were taking them out of Egypt? Or
not as such. They didn't really comprehend the concept of aliens in the same way that you do today. They understood that the beings were from a higher dimensional realm, but the idea to them at that time, in their understanding, is what they ultimately decided was beings from heaven. Beings from above.
Is that what? So right now in our reality, it's kind of, we think that it's God that led the Jews out of Egypt and not actual beings. And was this what they wanted us to believe, or was it just a misunderstanding and it just kind of?
It is not that you were given information that would allow you to necessarily understand the specifics of it. So it is something that simply grew in human understanding over time based on the lack of information you had about exactly what these beings were, because they did not deem that humans were ready to understand the full implications of beings from other civilizations among the stars.
And do you think we are now?
Well, you obviously understand that there can be civilizations among the stars. You're talking to one right now.
I am.
Many people on your planet are willing to accept the possibility, at least, that there can be other civilizations on planets around other stars. This is not something that is necessarily that strange to your civilization anymore. You talk about it quite a bit in your scientific and astronomical communities.
True. Yes. And more.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you could describe, I would really like to know what the interaction was like between Moses and the ETs at the top of Mount Sinai.
Some of it was physiological, some of it was telepathic. He was invited into a craft. Many things he was made to forget, but some things he was allowed to remember, as according to what was necessary for the proper approach and interactions and relationship between those beings and the people at that time, so that they could be guided.
And lastly, the Star of David, where did that come about, and why is it the symbol of the Jews?
It is the symbol of the relationship between those beings and those people, and in general between the above and the below. It is the intersection of the higher dimensions with the lower physical reality. It is a flattened form of the Merkaba.
Okay, so why wouldn't it be just the symbol of humanity? Why not the symbol for all of us?
It is, as I said. I just said that. At the time, it was the symbol of the relationship between those specific beings and the group that they were guiding. But it is, in general, the symbol of the relationship from the above to the below, from the heavens to the earth.
Okay. And one last hard question. Why did they save the Jews from Egypt, but they didn't protect them or save them in World War II from the Holocaust?
It was important to allow certain genetics from the Anunnaki line to survive up to a certain point. But beyond that, once there was dominion of the humans of the earth to make their own decisions, their decisions could not be intervened or interfered with beyond a certain point.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bashar. I love you very much.
Our unconditional love to you as well.
Bye-bye.
Good day.
Hey Bashar, this is Michael from Tel Aviv, Israel, and I'm excited to be asking you a question. So my understanding is that when we want to manifest things that we prefer, it's not about forcing anything or making anything happen. It's about allowing the manifestations to come as they need to when we are in the state we prefer. My question is, does that idea work for inner states of being as well? In other words, am I supposed to bring awareness to whatever's going on in my mind and allow the energy from my higher mind to flow through? Or should I be reaching for that higher energy, the higher mind, in a more conscious way? Thank you and good day.
Yes, the idea of reaching is, in a more conscious way, following the formula. That's why we give it to you. So that by following the formula, you allow the automatic to happen. And that is the increase in your frequency, which makes it easier for you to recognize the flow of communication from the higher mind.
Good day, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
My deepest appreciation for you and Daryl and April and Emmy and Desiree and everybody there for this opportunity. I appreciate having this chance to talk to you in this way. So thank you so much.
And our deep appreciation to you as well.
And I also want to say happy belated birthday. You and I have birthdays one day apart. So wishing you a happy belated birthday.
Thank you very much. And to you as well.
Thank you, Bashar. So my first question is, I'm having a lot of significance with birds. So right before this interaction, we saw a big bald eagle sitting in a tree outside the window.
How exciting.
It is exciting. And hawks tend to be a synchronicity sign. I've had some experience with some owls lately.
Oh, all right.
And then my favorite has been crows. So I've been really connected to this crow family that's nearby, and I interact with them on a regular basis. We go on walks, and they kind of come around and they hang out on the ground with us.
Yes, yes.
And now I'm starting to notice that where I go in other places, there's crows that are not related that tend to do the same thing sometimes. So I wanted to see if there's any insight that you have to that.
Well, first, of course, and foremost, do remember that in synchronous symbolism, with a program that you have on Earth, you are, when you interact with those beings, actually walking with dinosaurs. You know this, yes?
I want to hear more.
Do you understand that birds are an evolutionary offshoot of one branch of the dinosaurs? That's why many scientists, now that they understand that some dinosaurs evolved into birds, actually refer to birds now, more scientifically, as avian dinosaurs. So you are walking with dinosaurs, which means you are connected to the idea of ancient experience, speaking linearly for a moment. You are picking up ancient experiences, grounding yourself in the very early eras of Earth and bringing them into the present, where the dinosaurs have learned to soar and fly and carry those ancient vibrations into the sky. So they form, in a sense, a link and a bridge between the earth and the sky, and those that can allow themselves to align with them in certain ways are also vibrationally carried aloft and yet remain connected to the ancient past, the ancient wisdoms, the ancient experiences in a timeless way.
I love that. So I guess my next question is there anything, obviously acting on my excitement, I understand that is the formula. Is there anything as far as communication with them that you can encourage or would give me any tips to make our interaction even more enriching?
Well, what has your imagination provided for you?
I haven't really tried to communicate with them. I just haven't felt the impulse yet, but I think that would be exciting at some point to start to communicate with them.
Then I would ask the first question is, if that is something you would find exciting, what is preventing you from using your imagination to figure out ways in which you would enjoy doing so?
Yeah, that's, I haven't thought of that, but I think it's just doing it. It's just silly just to, just do it.
You're kind of putting an imaginary block there that doesn't need to exist.
Sure. And thanks for helping me become aware of that.
All right. Well, allow yourself to fly then, and expand your imagination and come up with all sorts of ways in which you could begin to communicate more clearly with them. One suggestion we might have that might help you, might assist you in this journey, is to look at the different birds that you said you were attracted to and recognize for yourself what each species actually symbolizes, represents to you energetically or symbolically. That can give you some insight as to how to relate to each of those different kinds of birds.
Okay.
All right?
I love that. Thank you.
All right.
My next thing I want to ask about is I recently went to Sedona for the first time and had a pretty magical, mystical experience there.
All right. How exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. And so there was a sunrise hike that I did to Bell Rock, and my girlfriend and I were there for a few days, and we did see a craft every night. And I did see the craft before my hike on Bell Rock. And I'm curious, because it was close to Bell Rock, if you could help me identify who that was.
Nope.
Nope.
Not yet.
Okay.
You're in process. Things will unfold. You'll get the information that you need, but not quite yet.
Okay. And then my next experience was we were doing a hot springs adventure at Mystic Hot Springs in Utah. And I did happen to see 3 grays, that 2 of them, so they were standing up on the hillside. It was interesting because 2 of them kept merging into one.
Yeah.
And it was a quick experience. And then later that evening, we went to sleep early, and it felt like I was dreaming all night long. And I know you've explained that it happens right as you're waking up, that it's being translated into our consciousness, but it felt like it was a long experience. And
yes. Well, the real experience did happen over a span of time. I'm just simply saying that what you wake up with as you remember as a dream is simply symbols that are created just before you wake up.
Okay. And so in that dream, there was the experience that we were on a craft with these 3 grays, the 2 of them kept merging into one.
Oh, stop there for one moment.
Okay.
What you're describing is not literally physically happening to them that way. What you're experiencing is what might be called interdimensional lensing, where it's an expression of how they're interjecting themselves into your reality that makes it appear as if they're merging into one another. Not that that's actually physically happening. It's more of an optical illusion.
Okay. And so then we woke up, and then it was just, she actually had some physical illness after it.
Yes.
She didn't have the experience of the dream. She just felt the shift, and she felt the energy of it, but she didn't have any memory of it.
That's all right. That doesn't mean there wasn't some experience just because she doesn't remember.
Right. So in the morning when we went to leave our cabin, there was an interesting footprint on the door. It only had, from what I recall, it only had 4 toes, and the foot was it wasn't bigger than our human feet, but it was oblong, if that makes sense, just the shape of it.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if you have any insight as to who that was, or if you have anything.
It was a gray.
Okay.
I don't think that's very mysterious.
I just wanted to see if you had anything else that you wanted to share about that experience.
Yes, it's a symbol that you have 1 foot in each reality.
It feels like that. And to kind of talk about that a little bit. So I know we're shifting billions of times per second, and it's the awareness that we're shifting. And so I'm feeling it vibrationally, I'm feeling it energetically. I'm seeing some signs, I'm seeing things physically that are also giving me that awareness. Do you have any tips as to what we can look for to be able to differentiate or have a distinguishment about the shifting, to notice that we really are shifting?
Again, if you need to notice, you will, but the formula we give you doesn't leave out the capacity to recognize those shifts in a different way more clearly. Remember that it leaves nothing relevant out. That's why we give you that instruction manual. And if you simply follow your passion and the rest of the implementation of the formula, you will raise your frequency. And as you raise your frequency, you'll make yourself a more receptive antenna for higher frequency information and awareness. So it's all included. Just keep going. Act on your passion as often as you can. Do it with no insistence on the outcome. Remain in a positive state. Explore yourself. Find the beliefs that work for you. Find the beliefs that don't, and let them go. All of this will work together to give you more clarity and more perception of the shifts in the way that you need to.
Okay. Thank you, Bashar. That's all I have. I appreciate your time. Good day.
All right. Our deep appreciation and unconditional love to you as well. Good day.
Good day.
Hi, Bashar. It's Sheila from Lakeland, and I'm excited to ask you this question. This has to do with me being mistaken either for a celebrity or for someone people know, and I'm wondering what that could mean for me. So after a live event, at one of your live events in Sedona, people saw me and they thought I was the celebrity Frances Fisher, which was really awesome. But as I've traveled all over the globe, people often think I'm someone they know. In fact, I walked into a store and this gentleman walked up to me with open arms and said, "Pat," and he was so happy to see me, but I wasn't Pat. And people will say to me again and again, even after we realize that I'm not the person they think I am, they'll say, "But really, the way you speak and your gestures are just like this person that they know." And I'm wondering what to make of that. It feels like a compliment. It feels really nice, which is great, and maybe that's all there is. But maybe there's something more to it. I mean, when I'm connecting with people, I'm always really excited, like a like a Labrador puppy, to meet people, and it feels like such a good connection, like I'm allowing all that is and source to flow through me and focus on, the best in people and reflect back the best of myself, and all that feels awesome. I'm just wondering if there's something more to it or something that I could use about this thing where people think they know me. Thank you.
Well, again, the idea is that your excitement and desire to be of service in that way makes you a little bit of a chameleon. You will then take on whatever the vibration is that reflects back to them that familiarity, so they feel comfortable enough for you to communicate the energy to them that allows them to move forward in the way that they prefer to. So you're being of service by being a little bit of a reflection of whatever it is they feel they need to be comfortable in accepting that frequency within themselves so they can move forward.
Hi, Bashar.
And to you, good day.
Well, firstly, a big thank you for the opportunity to have this interaction.
And a big thank you to you as well for the co-creation of it.
Thank you. Before I'm going to ask my first question, I want to say that I understand that there are different ways to look at this, and that different individuals use different mechanisms for the creation of the experience of Alzheimer's disease.
Yes.
And you explained that in general, the majority of people that have the experience of having Alzheimer's has to do with them being in denial about their lives, that they wish to forget, that there is something in them that is to them so painful they cannot deal with it.
This is a very, very generalized response, but it is true for many people, although it is experienced in a variety, a multitude of different ways.
Okay. Because I was wondering, we call this process also dementia.
Yes.
It almost seems like the personality structure of the people going through this experience is somehow dissolving, and that they are shifting through different dimensions very rapidly.
Yes, all sorts of mental disorders that in some way, shape, or form reflect or represent an alteration of personality, be it the idea you call of dementia or Alzheimer's, or even dissociative personality disorder or schizophrenia. These things have one thing in common, in general, at their core. It is in some way, shape, or form an inability, due to either belief systems or what have you, to not allow different aspects of the personality to harmonize and blend in a coherent way for the reality that they chose to be in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. And I was also wondering, but what's happening on a soul level? How is the soul experiencing this process?
Well, again, it depends upon the reason why a soul may have agreed to have these kinds of experiences, or for the purposes that the soul needs those experiences, or simply in the way that the soul chooses to use them. So it will vary from soul to soul. But overall, the idea is one of seeking integration by creating dissociation, what appears to be disconnection, and then going through the process to arrive at a realization that disconnection is not real, but only an illusion. And that the paradox is, in order to actually have an experience of disconnection, you actually have to be connected. You have to be integrated to have an experience in some sense of disintegration.
Yes, I understand. And can you say that when people go through this process, that they eventually are able to look at the pain that they are, trying to avoid?
Some of them do and some of them don't. Again, it depends upon the choices that have been made for this life theme. Many of them give themselves the probability to arrive at that conclusion, but some of them choose not to, and they make their assessments in spirit after the life.
Okay. And I don't know, maybe in general, does the pain has to do with, a lack of self-worth?
It can. In general, again, a very generalized answer. Everyone will have a specific way of experiencing this if they choose to. All pain is the result, fundamentally, of resistance to the natural self.
Yeah, I understand.
Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
I also have a couple of questions concerning the Anunnaki.
Yes.
You mentioned that the Anunnaki were the first to genetically alter the DNA of the natural evolved Homo erectus here on Earth.
Yes, because at that point, the Homo erectus was available and compatible enough through panspermia millions of years before that for them to make the alteration and find enough similarity in their genetics to do so.
I understand. And I was wondering, after the Homo sapiens came into existence, have there been other alterations in our DNA due to other extraterrestrial races?
Yes, especially the Greys.
Especially the Greys.
Although they're not really an extraterrestrial race in the classic sense.
No, I understand. But for instance, the Pleiadians or any race we know of, do they made some alterations in our DNA also?
Well, not exactly in the same context. Some have been, by agreement, an energy shift that creates an alteration in your DNA by having you be given a frequency that then you choose to align with to create the alteration. But it's not a physiological manipulation in the typical sense.
Okay, I understand. And you also mentioned that the Anunnaki evolved, but did they evolve into a non-physical?
A few of them have, but basically what you know as the Pleiadians is one of the evolutionary offshoots.
Okay. So are the Anunnaki genetically linked to other extraterrestrial races that we know of? Yeah, you just explained it.
Well, I said Pleiadian, yes.
Okay.
And others that you may not know of.
Okay. Okay. And also concerning what we now talked about, I was wondering if I'm correct in my understanding that the Greys and the human beings have the same Anunnaki ancestors, but that the genetic alteration...
Well, not exactly the same, because the Greys come from an alternate version of reality. So they had their own history of interaction with the Anunnaki, but they're not the same Anunnaki because those Anunnaki belong in an alternate parallel universe.
Okay. Okay. Because I was wondering, I read somewhere that as a result, the people who eventually evolved into the Greys had a different expression of these genetic alterations than the human beings in this timeline. But that makes sense. Yeah.
Although the idea is that the humans of that version of Earth didn't, quote unquote, evolve into the Greys. They mutated themselves on purpose to be able to handle the environment that existed when they destroyed their version of Earth.
Okay. Okay. Oh, I thought, it's a mutation. I thought
it's a mutation.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for this.
Yes. It is the reason why some of their DNA can be compatible with the DNA of humans on your version of Earth and other versions of Earth, is because they actually started out as human.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would be too incompatible to create hybrids.
Hybrids, yes, exactly. Thank you for this.
Yes.
That was what I wanted to ask you today. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. Pleasant dreams to you.
Thank you.
Good day, dear Bashar. I would like to ask you about the gravity well. What does it look like? What is it made of? What is its geometry? How can we replicate it? Thank you. I love you.
On the template level, it is again the idea of the distortion of the space-time field, the space-time fabric, the consciousness field itself. The idea of how it looks in template form is as, in a two-dimensional description, just for the sake of convenience, like two overlapping Fibonacci spirals going in opposite directions radiating from a central point.
Hi.
And to you, good day.
Such a pleasure to see you again.
It is always a pleasure to interact with you as well.
I have a few short questions and then something to discuss with you.
Yeah.
I'll start with the short questions.
All right.
There has been like 2 books written a long time ago around soul schools by Michael Newton, how we are always in a soul pod and we're actually in school learning to grow.
In many different ways, yes. In many different ways, yes.
Yes. And does this happen with more advanced or civilizations that are already aware of the different...
There is always more to learn. There is always room for growth. It never ends.
That's great. There is kind of like for you, like you say, you don't sleep, you don't eat. So is there still this kind of sleep state that we go into, and then this awake state, although they can be the opposite at a soul level,
Yes.
that you experience, or it's more of just an understanding that?
For more, it's a constant experience of walking through different dimensions of space and time and spirit, constantly in a dream, constantly awake. But again, we also have what you might call mentors, teachers, higher dimensional beings that are also helping us to experience more things beyond the point to which we have already evolved. Again, it never ends. They have their mentors. They have their mentors.
Sure. So compared
And
to
even the idea of all that is can still experience different versions of all that is. It never ends.
it can just become perhaps a little more conscious.
That is exactly what happens. You expand your consciousness to contain, in more awareness, another level within yourself.
Yes, got it. Thank you. Is the average human life expected to be longer?
Yes, because the paradox is the more you live in the moment, in a sense, the less aging you experience, and therefore you appear to live longer in physical terms.
But not necessarily in like how we calculate age.
Well, in other words, just as we, on average, though there are longer lived beings in our society, on average, will live to about 300, but will probably look to you like we're about 30. So you are achieving this slowly as humanity, many of you, not all of you, but many of you.
Because there's a lot of people are starting to talk about how actually we should be able to live up to 140 years.
Oh yes, easily. And most likely you will find that within the next 50 to 75 years, that might be about the average lifespan. Maybe 120 to 150, depending upon the individual.
Wow. But there is also this collective that needs to be moving along for that to be happening for those individuals as well.
Yes, but again, remember that when you shift to another version of Earth that already has that collective.
Right, that's true.
I know, that's why I said it.
Yeah, thank you. In the near future, will we find a new material to replace plastic, or would we be able to find a way to break down plastics sooner?
Well, both. What we utilize is based on something your scientists understand to be nanotechnological. And it is a kind of crystalline metallic form that has plastic qualities that can change and shift its shape as it needs to and provide many different kinds of effects and have many different kinds of uses. Our ships, in a sense, are grown, and they have this ability to shift their shape and even within the cabin to provide what we need when we need it, and when we don't need it, it simply absorbs back into the walls or the floors or the ceilings. And it's all made out of the same seamless material.
That's so exciting.
Yes. So you're approaching this idea of this nanotechnology slowly. You'll arrive at something similar in the relatively near future.
That's great. I don't know whether people have asked this, but as we're approaching open contact, and
Yes.
I'm just like putting everything you've spoken about, how in there is no in the whole in all that is, there is positive and negative and all that, so there must be positive and negative extraterrestrials as well.
Well, yes, but your planet is not really dealing with what you would consider to be truly the negative ones. There may be some that have different agendas than you that are visiting your world. There may be some that don't pay much attention to you. There may be some that don't necessarily understand you and so can come off somewhat negative or cold to you or unfeeling or uncaring. But none of them that you're dealing with are really what you would consider to be malevolent.
Is that because of the kind of school Earth is?
Yes, and also because the vibrational changing that you are aligning with simply doesn't allow for those kinds of beings to find the version of Earth that you're creating for yourself, because it's too vibrationally incompatible.
Meaning we're quite vibrationally positive?
Those that align with that are and can never experience something that's that vibrationally negative outside of your own reality. Because Earth is its own island in a sense, collectively speaking, and it's going through different kinds of transitions collectively as well. Most of them are simply not compatible with beings that you would find to be relatively malevolent, although of course there are some versions of Earth that are, but you're not on them. Otherwise we wouldn't be talking to you.
Sure. Yay. Okay, good. It makes sense.
Yes,
Yeah,
because there would be no point in it.
that's right. That's right.
So yes, there are versions of Earth experiencing extremely malevolent extraterrestrial beings, but that simply has nothing to do with the ones that we are communicating to you in.
Right. And that's not the one I'm in.
Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking.
Yes, got it.
One moment, we heard a question. Yes, of course, we might communicate with some versions of Earth that have the capacity to shift from the negative to the positive vibration, because certainly that's to some degree what we're doing with your experience of the different versions of Earth. But I'm simply saying that below a certain threshold, there's not going to be necessarily choices being made by the collective consciousness that would allow themselves to shift to something more positive, and therefore those are the ones that would be pointless for us at this point to communicate with. So yes, we might communicate with some that have the potential to change, but not with the ones that have chosen no potential to change in that direction.
Totally get it. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Thank you, Bashar.
Good day.
Good day.
Hello, Tadeo.
Nania.
I have some questions from our viewers.
All right.
Can you help us understand more clearly what is the difference between positive and negative beliefs?
Well, again, the basic definitions, mechanically speaking, is that positive energy integrates, builds, expands, supports toward the idea of unity, harmony, understanding, awareness. Negative energy is that which segregates, separates, compartmentalizes, disconnects, diminishes. Now again, these things can be used in a variety of ways, because positive beliefs can be used negatively, negative beliefs can be used positively, or shall we say more precisely, limitations placed upon the consciousness are placed there through a negative mechanism of focusing and lessening your awareness so that you're only focused on physical reality, for example, and not the rest of your being. But the idea is that's a positive use, because without that use of the negative energy, the negative mechanism to focus you in physical reality, you couldn't have a physical reality experience, because you would be caught up in the awareness of the rest of your being. Your focus would be too broad. So the idea, again, is we're talking about mechanical effects, in a sense, the use of energy, the use of vibrational patterns to achieve certain ends. But when you have the idea of negative energy, negative beliefs that are perpetuating themselves to the detriment of the individual, not to the individual's advantage, then you have a cycle of spiraling downward, self-reinforced experiences of negativity, of diminishment, of disconnection. And the positive reinforcing itself allows you to continue to expand, grow, let go of what doesn't work for you, replace it with something else. It gives you a choice. Whereas the idea of the negative energy doesn't so much allow you to be aware of choices you could be making. That would be the simplest definition, is it's all about the ability and the freedom to choose as opposed to a lack of awareness of your ability to do that.
So can certain emotions be classified as positive and negative emotions?
Yes and no. Again, the idea is that all emotions are simply results, reflections of positive or negative beliefs. And again, we're talking about the idea of a mechanism, of an energy state. We're not putting a value judgment on this, that this is good and this is bad. We're simply talking physics, energy states. So while the emotions themselves are not exactly positive and negative per se, they can be reflective of positive beliefs or negative beliefs in terms of their energetic structure.
Would you say that we perceive and associate negative energy with negative emotions and positive energy with positive emotions?
Generally, you do that, but again, as we have said, these things can be used in both directions. So the idea is that, as we say, when you come upon something that you recognize, that you observe is out of alignment with your truth, you might feel a rush of what is typically referred to as anger, and most people would say that's a negative emotion. But in fact, the natural anger is simply a rush of energetic alignment or misalignment or recognition thereof of misalignment or alignment that allows you to make a decision and proceed however it is you really prefer to. But if the idea of the rush of recognition of misalignment with a concept lasts for maybe more than about 15 seconds, then yes, it can be representative of the idea of negative judgments and belief systems and definitions that are perpetuating that particular experience of emotion longer than would actually be necessary to use a positive or apply a positive effect to the recognition that something is out of alignment with you, so that you can move forward in a more positive way through that recognition that might be temporarily experienced as, quote unquote, the use of negative energy.
So how does that connect with the idea of high vibrational states and low vibrational states?
Well, generally speaking, high vibrational states generally are associated with positive energy because they are integrative and therefore they build up and increase the frequency because it's more integrative and more expansive. Whereas the idea of the diminishment of frequency is usually associated with the negative belief because it is compartmentalizing, separating, segregating, disconnecting in its experience, and therefore that equates generally to a diminishment of frequency in terms of the kind of energy we're talking about.
So is the idea that if a person is actually coming from a negative psychological state and they feel a rush of excitement and things like that, but it's actually based on the idea of diminishment of another person,
then it's not excitement that they're experiencing, it's a rush of anxiety. In other words, this is what goes back to what we began this transmission with: honesty in self-evaluation, so that you can have greater discernment in recognizing the difference between true excitement and anxiety within yourself. Because you can disguise them with dishonesty, with an inability or an unwillingness to really look at the belief systems within you and the reasons for why you choose to do what it is you choose to do. This is why it's so important to not be afraid to really look deeply at your belief systems so that you don't confuse the idea of anxiety with excitement, and vice versa, confuse excitement for anxiety.
Right, so you can see that it really is a process of understanding these concepts and not necessarily just immediately thinking because you have a certain emotion, that's a positive, higher vibrational state. You need to understand why you're feeling what you're feeling.
Yes, it's not about what you call knee-jerk reactions, either in positive or negative direction, but a realization, a clear understanding of why you're having the emotional reactions and responses you are, by getting in touch with the belief systems behind them to make sure that you are honest and clear within your ability to discern the difference.
So what would you say is the purpose of negative energy and negative beliefs?
Well, I just gave you one example. Without the idea of the use of a negative mechanism to impose certain limitations of focus upon your consciousness, you wouldn't be able to have a physical reality experience. So it can be used for a variety of reasons. And also, of course, as a comparative or contrasting energy, because sometimes by attracting what you might call a negative scenario in your life, you have a better understanding or a clearer understanding by comparison of what might be a positive scenario in your life. So it's sort of the old saying of it's easier to see a candlelight when it's surrounded by darkness.
And emotions and energy can be used in positive and negative ways. And we always have to keep that in mind.
Yes.
So does it mean that if we're talking to you that we're moving in a positive direction?
Generally speaking. But again, it depends upon what you do with what you have gained from the conversation. It's not just about the connection. It's about what you do with the connection. Because you can listen to us all day long and then go off and misinterpret, misunderstand some of the things we have said, or simply choose to misapply or apply them in a negative way in your life. So again, remember, it's not about what happens, it's about what you do with what happens that makes the difference in how you experience your reality.
And along
generally speaking, people that are interacting with us, on general, will be expanding their consciousness and thus raising their frequency if they are willing to allow the conversation to be what it needs to be for them, in allowing it to serve them in a positive way. That is a general truth. But again, it doesn't prevent someone from using it however they wish. We just want to be clear about that.
Okay, that's great. And along the lines of discernment, how can a person tell if a channel is real, so to speak, and whether or not they're actually channeling the entity's identity or existence for real?
It's not about determining whether the entity or the channel is quote-unquote real. As we have said before, it's about whether or not the information coming through that being works for you. Does it align with you in a way that allows you more freedom, more self-empowerment, more of what you prefer in your life? Or does it attempt to, shall we say, sow control or seed the ideas of control and you must do this and insistence on that? The idea, again, is does it expand you or does it diminish you in terms of how you apply that information? Please do remember, and this includes us as well, take what works for you and leave the rest behind. You get to determine what the information is for you and how valid or not valid it is for you. So it's not about whether the entity is real or accurate. It's about, does the information allow you to be using that information in a way that you prefer, or does it attempt to limit you in ways that you don't prefer?
So some individuals are asking about how to handle grief, how to go through that process of heartbreak in an easier way than typically we would experience here on Earth.
All right. Well, of course, first and foremost, it's all right if you allow yourselves to grieve, because it can be a process of letting go and expanding and reaching out and connecting on a different level. In most cases, the idea of grief is really nothing to do with the person that has gone on. It has more to do with the idea of the people that have, in your terms, been left behind in physical reality, because they have a wish to expand, they have a wish to understand their connection more to spirit. And so in some senses, they may experience the concept of sadness at having the idea of someone having expanded beyond them. And the belief that goes with it is the inability, again, not true inability, but the belief of inability to maintain that relationship. With more understanding, with more discernment, with more expansion of consciousness, grief will diminish. Because the idea is that you remain connected because you can stretch out with your senses and still communicate with those who are now in spirit, or things that you believe you have lost. When you understand there really is no loss, but only change, only shifting into a different state, then grief will be diminished because nothing really has been lost in your definition. You are not left behind. You are not abandoned. You are not bereft anymore. Those definitions no longer apply when you can begin to perceive that you are actually still in communication with those things and those people that have gone to a different state, because you have expanded your consciousness to the point where you can do that. You realize that. You're more aware of that. Now, because of holding on to the idea that something has been lost or that there is a true disconnection, many times when spirits attempt to make a communication or a connection with people that are physical, people may still experience grief because they're holding on to those negative definitions of separation, whereas many times, much later, months, years later, when people might think of those people that have died and experience sorrow and grief at those moments, that may actually be a moment when that being is attempting to communicate and connect with you, but you're only going to experience the energy of the connection as grief and continue to do so because you're continuing to hold on to the negative definition that something has been lost or that there is a disconnection.
It does also come down to the idea of accepting that you have started a new chapter in your relationship with that person.
Yes. Very often, the timing of people going into spirit will actually be an invitation to stretch the consciousness of the people still in physical reality, to reach out, to connect to them, to expand their senses so that they can be more aware of the idea of spirit and that those beings are still around, just in a different way. That it is an opportunity to expand the relationship and allow it to deliver gifts and understandings and information and energy that will serve the person in physical reality by allowing that person who has gone into spirit to be more of a guide.
And so when you do die, do you reconnect with the person that you loved or whoever you...
Well, very often, yes. But again, remember, you're not actually ever disconnected, but you become aware of the fact that the connection has never gone away. And yes, very often you will encounter them on the spirit level because, remember, you are all already on the spirit level. You never really leave it. That's more your natural state. Physical reality is an idea that a spirit has that it's no longer in spirit. But it is. Most of the being is in spirit and therefore in communication with that other being all the time, or at least often enough to know that there is always a connection. So when you pass, when you die, when you expand back into or awaken back into the fact that you never actually left spirit and you've been with that being all the time, then you realize that the idea that physical reality experience idea of having lost something was an illusion.
So another psychological question that people have has to do with reactions to negative information or information they're not happy about, or choices that they made that generate feelings of regret and rumination. Oh, woulda, coulda, shoulda. All those kinds of reactions to information.
Yes. But again, you're talking about emotional reactions that are the result of belief systems being held in the conscious mind or unconscious mind of that individual. So again, the idea is, it's not about focusing on the idea of the emotional reactions so much as it is acknowledging that they're there, and if you prefer, using them to backtrack what kind of beliefs you would have to be buying into or holding on to for those particular emotional responses to have been generated. Because you have to know, if you understand how things work, that there can be no such thing as an emotion in a vacuum. You don't just automatically have an emotion to information or circumstances or situations. If you didn't have a definition of your relationship, positive or negative, to that circumstance, you wouldn't have any emotional response at all. So the idea is you can use the emotions that come up, not by ignoring them, but by acknowledging that they're there and using them to get in touch with what you would have to believe is true about yourself in this situation in order to have the response or reactions that you're having emotionally. The idea is, again, to understand how these things work, what generates what, and to understand that the beliefs and the definitions always come first, whether you're aware of them or not. That's why the emotions and thought patterns and behaviors can be so valuable in being able to backtrack all the way back to what kind of beliefs would generate those kinds of emotions and thoughts and behaviors. That's what the belief systems use to reinforce themselves, to make themselves seem more real. They reinforce themselves by generating emotions so it feels real, by generating thought patterns that are in alignment with that particular belief system so that you think it's real, and by generating behaviors that go hand in hand with that belief system so that it really seems physically reflectively real, and thus it creates reinforcing experiences in physical reality to drive the point home that this belief now feels like it's true, feels like it's a fact, when in fact it's not a fact. It's just what the belief is generating to reinforce itself, to perpetuate itself, because beliefs have to do that in order for you to have a physical reality experience at all. If beliefs didn't reinforce themselves, the entire illusion of physical reality would just go poof, and you would never have a physical experience. So the idea is to understand that all those emotions that you're talking about, all the feelings that people talk about, are indicators of something you believe to be true about yourself. Because whatever information comes to you, if you understand that it's not true for you, if it's not in alignment with who you prefer to be and what you are, there would be no real negative reaction to it at all. It would be similar to the idea, as we have said before by illustration, of a total stranger coming up to you on the street and giving you information that you know has nothing to do with you because this person doesn't know you. So you don't really react to it per se in the way that you might by having information come from a familiar person, or by having information come in a way that was outside the expectation or insistence that you had, that certain things had to go a certain way. You wouldn't have the same reaction. So you have to understand that all these things, in a sense, can be treated like strangers who don't really know you. Then you get to decide what information and advice works for you and what can be applied by you to your life. And you get to decide what doesn't relate to you, what isn't your preference, by remaining neutral and objective in the same way you would if a total stranger gave you a piece of information. You would go, well, does this apply to me or not? This person doesn't really know me. Therefore, I get to decide what piece of this information is advice I can take and what piece has nothing to do with me.
And I was thinking of some advice you gave us a while back about, especially for those that have a choice of reacting very negatively instantly and not being able to control themselves in a sense. The idea of taking a moment of pause. Do you want to expand on that?
Well, again, that's your power. Anytime you find yourself reacting, that's usually an indication that there's a belief that's unconscious. And taking a moment of pause to find out what that belief would be gives you the ability to bring it into your conscious mind so that you can decide whether that belief makes sense to hold on to or not, or whether it would be better served if you let it go. So when you find yourself reacting, enjoy a moment of pause. Take a step back and say, wait a minute, why am I reacting this way? What belief would be causing this kind of an emotional reaction so quickly? First of all, it must be something unconscious that I've bought into that I'm unaware of, so what could it be? Then you use your imagination to find out what you would have to believe is true in order to have had that particular emotional response. Taking those moments are the most important thing you can do because that's living in the moment. That's examining what's happening in the moment. That's staying in the moment. That's not suppressing it, ignoring it, rushing ahead to something else you think is better. That's staying right with the process. That is the most important process because it's all about knowing yourself, discovering yourself honestly, with integrity, deep diving into what beliefs must exist within your consciousness in order for you to be experiencing the emotional reactions you are, because you understand how things work, and therefore because you understand that this emotion couldn't have been there without a belief existing first.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Now, we live in interesting times now because there's a lot.
You always live in interesting times. They're just differently interesting.
Right. The idea that we can't agree about what is true in a sense. So there's a couple of different areas where this is showing up. One is in the idea of science. Even though we've advanced very far technologically, many people do not believe in science, and it causes a conflict with those that do.
Yes.
What can you say to us about knowing how to deal with that?
Well, again, you're not only experiencing the idea of different beliefs, but you might even be experiencing the idea of different realities, literally. So some people simply may not have a perception of the reality that another person has. However, in a lot of those cases, the idea simply comes from what we have just said, that there may be no real honesty in their self-investigation in terms of their belief systems. They may have great fear or have been trained to have fear as a reaction to certain things because of the definitions that they've been taught to attach to those things and what it means about the person, who may feel powerless, who may feel uneducated, who may feel unworthy, who may feel less than, so that they're unwilling to explore things that would put them in touch with the fear-based belief systems that they're attempting to avoid. So this is why, again, it's so very important to have this great honesty in your self-evaluation, because most people will generally find, if they are willing to investigate themselves deeply with great honesty and integrity, that they have simply been afraid to allow certain ideas into their lives because of what they think it means about them if they do so, or that they may find themselves unable to cope and find themselves lacking or wanting for being a more expanded consciousness. So there will be a lot of avoidance of things in a variety of ways. And I'm not just necessarily talking about one side or the other. This can happen in any particular direction. And again, this is why it's so important to have great honesty and a willingness to explore why someone might reject something or why someone might hold on to an idea a little bit harder than they otherwise might. It's always going to start with the idea of honest investigation of what you believe to be true in relation to that thing about yourself and your self-worth.
So also in the area of conspiracy theories, a lot of people are attracted to that. And is the idea that if someone is focused, highly focused on conspiracy theories, that they will generate that reality for themselves?
Of course. In fact, that's what conspiracy theories rely on.
Because are they generally negative beliefs, conspiracy theories?
Well, you can really call anything a conspiracy in the broadest sense of the term, as long as more than one person goes along with the idea, whether it's positive or negative. That's just a general idea, because the original root word conspire simply means to breathe together, to have the same ideas, to have the same thoughts that reinforce one another, and to move in a certain direction with more than just yourself, with other people who are conspiring with you to move in that direction. But there can be positive conspiracies and negative conspiracies. So the idea again comes down to, are these based on fear-based beliefs, or are they based on love-based beliefs, joy-based beliefs, empowering beliefs or disempowering beliefs? Beliefs that allow you to feel you are being controlled or manipulated or pushed in a certain direction that may not necessarily be to your benefit, or whether they are allowing you more freedom to choose and expand your consciousness as you see fit.
So when people use that term, going down the rabbit hole,
yes,
how would you describe, what is that? Is that like falling into a belief that you can't verify is true and then allowing that to become your guiding principle?
It can be. The term falling down the rabbit hole usually means that once you have locked into a particular belief system, especially one that might be actually fundamentally negative, it's going to spiral you downward energetically in such a way to make it more challenging to find your way out of it. Because again, it's not necessarily going to be the kind of belief system that gives you the freedom to know you can choose other belief systems. You become locked into a particular belief system energy, and the negative ones make it much more challenging to know that there's even a chance of finding your way out.
So what is like mind control? Is there such a thing? And why are people thinking they're susceptible to mind control?
Well, again, when an individual has an incredible lack of self-worth, they always look to some other authority to define their life for them. And because they feel abandoned or lost without that kind of authoritative input, they feel like they are adrift or disconnected without someone else to guide them. They will usually swallow anything that comes along that makes them feel as if someone is going to give them a purpose which they have been unable to give themselves.
Okay, so if you're trying to discern between censorship versus community, self-governing behavior, let's call it that.
Yes.
What is a good way to determine whether your beliefs or your positions are being censored, or if it's simply an idea of the greater good and whether or not a certain way of speaking might be inciting violence?
Yes. Well, some of this also will come down to the actual physical, or shall we say, sociological laws that you have instituted as part of your society. Some of it will be determined based on the laws you have created for yourselves to guide yourselves. Some of it will be based, again, on the clear understanding of what it is that you're actually connecting to within yourself and whether that energy is mechanically positive or negative. So again, it's about having the awareness, the wherewithal, the clarity, the discernment, the compass within yourself to understand when you are sharing information in alignment with what you typically refer to as the greater good, or whether you are actually going against the grain, against the flow of your true self, and disguising it maybe as the idea of the greater good. But again, real honesty would be able to tell the difference.
Okay. Thank you. That's very clarifying.
All right.
There's some questions about the galactic world.
Yes.
One question is, what is the Interstellar Alliance, and is it different from the Galactic Federation of Worlds?
Not necessarily. Again, it's a loose reference to a collective of a number of civilizations, and there are actually several. So one thing may call itself, in your language, a interstellar alliance, as we often do. Sometimes other galactic, shall we say, gatherings or collectives may refer to themselves as a different term, a collective, a federation, what have you, a council. It really doesn't matter overall, although it is important to recognize that there may be different collectives within even your galaxy.
Now, one person mentioned that in their heart they feel like in galactic life there's no need for alliances or federations. In other words, that the vibrational level is higher, and so what we perceive as a documented group or something is actually on a spirit level more about connecting vibrationally to beings of a similar ilk.
Yes, we don't have the idea of hierarchical governments in the way that many people on your planet think of it. So, yes, sometimes you might impose the human concept of hierarchies and certain kinds of organizational principles on what we refer to as an interstellar alliance, when in fact it is, as our civilization is, based more on simple synchronism, where like vibration works with like vibration very automatically and synchronistically, and simply recognizes that there is a commonality of overall vibration among a particular gathering or group of individuals or civilizations. It's nothing absolutely formal. There can sometimes be certain gatherings and so on and so forth that might represent the idea or sharing of a different direction or a new idea, and the others get to decide whether they align with it or not. But the idea simply is it's much looser than you might think. It's more based on synchronism and knowing how things work than it is in imposing a particular formal structure on these civilizations.
So, how far is your ship right now above Sedona?
About 3,000 of your miles.
Okay, and you did mention something earlier about the window of contact. Has the window of contact changed?
Well, yes. We have mentioned that because of certain changes going on now in your global society, whereas the beginning of the window of contact used to be your year of 2025, it is now 2023, so 2 years earlier.
And this just happened recently?
Yes.
Okay. And I know you interact with a lot of civilizations. So
Yes.
Are there any names that you can share with us that other civilizations call you?
Call us?
Yes, you specifically, I think.
Generally, although there are some exceptions here and there depending upon their culture, you will find that in whatever way they communicate, whatever language they may use or telepathic understanding they may have, most of them refer to us in some way, shape, or form as the halfways or the messengers.
Now, one person had a dream where they were surrounded by Essassani beings and they were told that they're getting a promotion and that it would involve a lot more responsibility. And the person felt a lot of fear about whether they could accept that level of responsibility. Could you give us an idea of maybe what the interpretation of that kind of a dream would be?
Well, in a sense, it's kind of like saying, here is a reflection of more of your own true energy. Do you have a belief system that allows you to know you are capable of handling it and expressing it in a positive and responsible way? So it's sort of like presenting someone with their potential and finding out where their belief system is relative to the potential they're being shown to see if they're ready to flow that potential through themselves. They don't have to be, but it's a good marker to show them where they're at with respect to their understanding and belief system about their ability to flow the energy they're being presented with, to be more of themselves.
Okay. All right. These questions have to do with metaphysics. One of them having to do with why do we cross-connect to other lives and then interpret that as being a quote-unquote past life? And how does that influence us when we make a cross-connection to another life?
Well, you're always sort of gathering information that you may need to inform your own experience here in this life. So the idea of connecting to other beings in what you call different time frames has a lot to do with how you actually create your physical reality anyway. Remember that, as we said, the idea that you experience space and time are illusionary side effects of your consciousness shifting through billions of parallel frames of reality every single second. So because you're shifting through different frames of parallel realities anyway to create the idea of your physical space-time reality experience, you're automatically connecting and disconnecting with different beings, different versions of yourself and other beings in these different parallel realities to inform the track you're on based on the themes you chose to explore and the challenges that you chose to face in this life. So you're drawing from a number of sources to aid and assist you. It's sort of similar to the idea of your internet in that if you need a particular piece of information, you will Google it. So it's really no different than saying, well, I need a certain kind of experiential inspiration right now, and since that already exists in a parallel reality, instead of having to learn it from scratch, why not just tap into it and download that information so I'll automatically, synchronistically get the inspiration to move forward in the way that I need to, so I don't necessarily have to go through a longer process than I need at this particular moment.
Okay. And this is an interesting question, the idea of electrons in our auric field.
Yes.
And whether or not the people we're attracted to energetically may be out of balance in a number of electrons, and we're out of balance in a number of electrons, and that's where an attraction is created? Is that?
Well, yes and no. It can be used that way. It's one way in which you can interpret the idea of the electron field that is just above your skin and part of the auric field around your body electromagnetically. But depending upon the spin rate of those electrons will determine many different things, including possibly, potentially, in certain cases, ideas of attraction or even ideas of repulsion. Just depends on how they're spinning, what rate they're at, the rate of spin, the direction of spin, can be included in the overall vibrational sensing that you get in terms of whether or not it is important for you or germane or relevant for you to interact in certain situations with other people.
So does each version of us have a different higher self?
Yes. Because remember, the idea of a being, a person, so to speak, in the classical sense of a part of a consciousness experiencing physical reality is what goes hand in hand with that. What is automatically contained in the kit is the non-physical higher self that guides that particular personality. And that means you also, for each person, have a particular individual soul, because it's the soul that diversifies itself into the non-physical higher mind to guide the physical mind having the physical experience. Where it gets more blended together is in the idea of the oversoul, from which many singular souls can extend, and each individual soul thus creating a higher mind and a physical mind for that particular physical incarnational experience. But the oversoul can simultaneously experience all of that if it wishes to.
So when we were originally hybridized by the Anunnaki,
yes,
what changes did they make to us that were some positive and some negative that are still with us today that we're dealing with?
It is highly likely you would not have the religious structure that you have in certain religious organizations if you didn't have that experience, because what was instilled in the genetic makeup at that time was the idea that you are required to rely on the idea of an authority figure as an intermediary between you and your connection to all that is. Therefore, that's what the religious construct is all about. Not the spiritual construct, but the religious construct of an organization that acts as a go-between between you and your connection to all that is, whereas the spiritual one does not require, as you would say, a middleman.
Did they suppress our DNA in certain ways to make us feel disconnected from Source?
To some degree, because they needed to impose themselves as the Source. Now, those markers are there and they're opening up, and you are realizing more and more that you have your own connection because you are reflections of Source. So the idea really was relatively temporary, and when the Anunnaki left and left you on your own to your own devices, and some of the more positive ones came back to guide you a little bit here and there, they knew that over time, because of the different cycles on the earth and the idea of the expansion of consciousness in general, that those markers would probably drop away or turn back on in a way that would allow you more recognition of yourselves as reflections of Source, not necessarily requiring the so-called middleman or authority figure anymore to determine your relationship to all that is.
Okay, and lastly, on the idea of nature,
yes,
is there an ET civilization that preserves animals that are being made extinct by humans? And
yes,
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 yes.
Great. Now, where are they? They just preserve the DNA?
Sometimes they preserve the DNA and regrow the animals or the foliage, the trees. Sometimes they take whole animals to that world, transport them there. You, as a human society, would rarely miss many dozens of animals of a particular species, because you're simply not always that in touch with how many of them there actually are anyway. So I will tell you that maybe not absolutely all, but just about all animal species that have ever existed on your planet, and all plant species and flower species that have ever existed on your planet still exist on other worlds because they have been taken there in one form or another.
That is so exciting. And that means that, can that be used like to terraform other planets?
It can and often is.
Oh my goodness. That makes me feel better.
Part of that was used to create our world.
That's right, because you have species that are similar to ours in certain respects.
Some. Now, evolution has taken some of them in different directions because our planet is different and the environment is different and so on and so forth. But we do have some that actually are almost identical to some of the species on your planet because, again, they have been seeded there for the purpose of creating a full ecosystem. Since some beings and creatures and animals and trees and flowers and so on and so forth have certain abilities, it's like sort of saying, why reinvent the wheel if they already will fit into a new ecosystem to provide that particular function to allow the ecosystem to thrive. So it's kind of like waste not, want not.
So before the humans were hybridized here, what was the Earth like? Is it like we were told about dinosaurs and,
Well, it depends on what era you're talking about. I mean, you have, as scientists, a relatively good idea in general of the different epochs that existed on your planet and what kind of life forms existed in them. You are missing some pieces, but not too many. But you're learning more about that. But again, remember, the idea of the hominids that existed before the Anunnaki injected their DNA were not human in the sense that you understand it. They were humanoid or human-like, hominids, but not actually Homo sapiens. It took the Anunnaki genetics to turn the hominid that existed naturally on your planet, that evolved naturally on your planet, into what you now consider yourselves to be as Homo sapiens, as human beings.
So interesting, the timing of the beings that they chose to use to hybridize would all be dependent on the level of evolution that we had achieved at that particular stage.
In some senses, yes, although there was quite a wide window there, because remember, they visited your planet several hundreds of thousands of years ago. So there was quite a long window of the idea of humanoid or hominid species existing on your planet for millions of years before they arrived. They knew it might be likely that they might find such life because of what you call panspermia, where different kinds of genetic material, DNA, is delivered to different planets on comets and asteroids and meteors. And thus it is not uncommon in certain sections of the galaxy to find somewhat similar life on a variety of planets, even though there may be vast differences. Certain sections are seeded in certain ways, and therefore there are clusters of planets within the galaxies when they are capable of harboring life that have some similarity between them, whereas in other clusters there may be a very different kind of life that was seeded from a different source altogether in the galaxy. But you will find that the idea of certain similarities exist not just on individual isolated planets, but on clusters of planets within the galaxy because of the way in which certain genetic material from different kinds of beings were spread throughout the galaxy.
So what is the purpose of viruses, and are they conscious?
Everything is made of consciousness. That doesn't mean that they are self-aware in the same way that you are. The basic purpose, actually, there are a multitude of purposes. Some of them are for the purpose of maintaining the physiological genetic strength of a species and removing those that aren't necessarily strong, so they can vacuum up the genetics in a way that can be reintroduced in a way that a new species can use them to maintain strength by becoming used to the idea of the way that the virus uses the DNA material and becoming immune to the negative effects over time. So viruses fundamentally strengthen the entire population by weakening or taking out the weakened ones.
And they spur us to make new advances in our technology.
Yes. Now, there's much more to them than that, but we're not going to go deeply into that now because that's a very large topic.
Okay. Just lastly, what is the distinction between elementals and nature spirits?
Not much. The idea in general is it just depends upon the presentation of that consciousness, how it chooses to present itself. In general, you can look at it this way. There is a kind of conscious energy field that is connected to the earth, its spirit form, so to speak, because everything has a spirit form. And that energy form, that consciousness field, is very plastic, very malleable. So certain vibrational patterns of consciousness, individual beings that are not necessarily physical per se, but are discrete, distinct, self-aware patterns of consciousness within that consciousness field, have more ability to manipulate the field in a way to create what appear to be physical bodies to present themselves in a different frequency, in a different domain. And that's why they can kind of come and go. They can manifest seemingly physiologically, but then sort of back out into the energy field, the consciousness field again, and then manifest again in a different way. That's why many nature spirits are shapeshifters and are usually invisible to many of you if your senses don't extend that far into their particular non-physical domain, and can appear to people in many different ways, in many different times, in many different places, in many different shapes. They are the expressions of the consciousness field in discrete form for particular archetypal purposes.
Thank you so much, Bashar. We really appreciate it. And lots of love to you from all of us.
And our unconditional love to all of you. And now, if all of you would like to become comfortable in your cozy little homes, we will now begin the process of a meditation to help crystallize in the idea of getting high in the way that we have described it. So allow yourselves to become relaxed, comfortable, let go of the cares of the day, breathe deeply and easily, and if you have images or music you would like to bring in, by all means, please do so at this time. Bring up your music, bring up your lights, whatever it is you wish to do. Relax, be comfortable. And allow yourselves to remember what we have said about H.I.G.H. Honesty, integrity, gratitude, and humility. These discrete concepts have their own frequencies, and allow yourself to begin to feel those frequencies, and especially in perceiving with your imagination the different frequencies in each of those concepts, honesty, integrity, gratitude, and humility. Allow yourself to understand that they are of a type, of a nature, where their frequencies combine into a very specific harmonic that sort of creates an energy bubble around you, a state of being that can carry you forward like its own reality bubble. This is specifically an orchestration, like music, these four energy states combining in the harmonic in the way that they do. So allow yourselves to feel each one as we go through them once again. Allow yourself to feel the vibration, the clarity that comes with honesty of self, of knowing thyself, as you say, of investigating deeply the being that you are, the beliefs that you hold to be true, and generating the ability of greater discernment to tell the difference between excitement and anxiety, to know which beliefs are really true for you and which are born out of fear instead. Do not be afraid to be afraid in this investigation of self-honesty. The deeper you go, the higher you will go, the more expanded you will be. Because as you go deeper in, you go farther out. So allow yourself to feel the vibration, the clarity, that comes with self-honesty, knowing yourself, the certainty, the conviction of who and what you are, not the insistence, but the conviction of knowing who you are more truly, more clearly. Feel that vibration, because it's a vibration of freedom, of absolute freedom to be who you truly are, to take away the limitations that hold you back, that are based on fear, that are based on assumptions, that are based on insistence, that are based on the idea that there is only one way. There is your way, and there are other ways, and your way is the way for you. But that doesn't mean someone else's way is your way, or the only way. Allow yourself to feel that vibration of freedom that comes with honest self-awareness. And allow yourself to feel the vibration of integrity, that which binds you together, that allows you to understand the vibrations within you and how they exist and can exist without conflict. Even those that might seem to be polarized can be seen as two extensions of the same source in the center, can be seen as the power of paradox, for they all live within you. And with honesty, you will create an ability to bond together those that are in harmony with one another in a way that validates all the beliefs in their own way, without you necessarily having to experience the effect of the ones you don't prefer. The integrity allows you that position of neutrality, of neutral observation. Feel that energy of neutrality that allows you to examine anything without necessarily energizing it into an experience, but allows you to validate it all, because everything you've ever experienced has brought you to where you are now, both the positive and the negative. So the more you relax and validate it all, the easier it will be for you to move forward with integrity in the ones that you prefer, the beliefs that you prefer, without invalidating the ones that you don't prefer. And you will move forward as an integrated, integral being with honesty and clarity and freedom. Feel that vibration and feel those two vibrations blending together to allow a bigger sense, a greater sense of release and freedom. And then feel that vibration of gratitude, of appreciation, not only of all that is and everything in existence, but of yourself, for you are worthy or you wouldn't exist. The gratitude for your life, for your experiences, for all that you have experienced, for all that you have learned, for all you have yet to learn. Prayer is simply gratitude for what is, for having been given the opportunities you have been given, the challenges you have been given, the themes that you chose to explore. Be grateful and appreciative for it all, and feel that specific vibration of gratitude, of love, of support, of nurturing. For even as you allow yourself to appreciate yourself, you will experience more the deep appreciation and support and unconditional love that is emanated throughout all of existence by all that is. It is the primary frequency of all that is. Allow yourself to feel that knowingness of your value, your validity, your worth, and appreciate the gifts that you have to give and the gift that you are to all that is as a reflection of it, so that it can be all that it is in all the ways it can be. Feel that vibration of gratitude and deep appreciation and unconditional love for yourself and for everything in all that is all that is, including you. And let those three vibrations blend together harmoniously as a musical equation, as an energy equation that is building and building and building within you, and allows you to feel the idea of your freedom growing, expanding, more and more, releasing you from belief systems that are not yours. The acceleration that comes with this, the expansion, the sensation that comes with this, moves you toward the final part of this particular formula, this orchestration, humility. Remaining centered, remaining grounded in all of this. For the appreciation will help you with this. The integrity will help you with this. The honesty will help you with this. For there is no need for the ego to be stressed, to become negative, thinking that it knows everything when it doesn't need to. When you can rely automatically on the synchronicity and know that things are working to your advantage if you simply allow them to. So it is the humility of allowance rather than believing you have to make everything work. It is the humility of simply allowing it to work in the way that it exists, of not attempting to control everything, manipulate everything into position, but truly going with the flow, since you know that your flow knows exactly where you need to go, and that you are cared for, that you are supported, that you are nurtured unconditionally. You can be then in your humility very powerful as a being and very attractive as a being. And of course, by humility, we do not mean in any way, shape, or form that you are disaffecting yourself, disavowing yourself, that you are putting yourself down, that you are being a martyr. That is not what humility means. It means simply knowing who you are, being who you are, being grateful for who you are, and just acting in that stead, in a grounded way that allows you to be the link in the bridge between above and below, to be a reflection and a representation of the gift and the reflection that you are of all that is. Humility is simply nothing more than being yourself and not needing to be anything more or less than that. It is just being here and now in the present and allowing yourself to experience all that that present has to offer you. And then reflecting that and sharing that in whatever way is appropriate with others without needing them to in any way, shape, or form align or believe as you do, knowing that everyone has their own path and that you are being of service by being yourself. And that's all it takes. That's all it takes. And with this fourth harmonic, you feel the freedom of release, the flow of your life coursing through you, and the knowledge and understanding that you are made of light, that you are made of love, that you are a reflection of all that is. Breathe this in. Anchor it within yourself, ground it within yourself, so that you exist on high, so that your vibration rises to the heavens, so that the heavens may unfold within you. As above, so below, and it is all one. It is all here. It is all now. It is all that is. Be gentle, be kind, be loving, be giving, and be yourself. Do not give your power away. Decide and choose what is true for you. This is your greatest freedom. And these four states of being combine to give you more ease with that freedom to choose. So we thank you for getting high with us this day of your time. Continue to soar, spread your wings and fly. Our unconditional love to you all. And we bid you an exciting day as you gently return, but to a new reality, breathing it in, breathing it out, as a new person on a new day, in a new world, in a new reality. You exist, and that's enough. Be yourself, and that's enough. relax and float, and just be with yourself, and be with all that is, and be with all others, here and now, in gentility and kindness and love. And just float. Float freely. And let the overall harmonic of the freedom that you deserve radiate from you to all, so that they may also pick up on that vibration, and if by choice, join in that frequency and allow themselves to also be free of their fears and limitations in any way, shape, or form that hold you back from being who you truly are. Continue to breathe easily and gently in love and light. We welcome you home. Good day. Good day.